Hi everybody, this is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, December the 12th, and welcome to our video commentary. Well, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about these Cuban doctors who were in Brazil, and President-elect Bolsonaro decided that they were going to go back home, back to Cuba, unless the relationship with the doctors was changed. The way it works right now is that these doctors were being paid $3,500 a month, of which $900 went to the doctor and the remaining $2,600 or whatever went to the Cuban government. There was a way of the Cuban government using doctors as a way of like renting doctors, if you will, to other countries and keeping almost 3/4 of their salary. The salary was actually going to the Cuban government, and then a very small portion to the doctors themselves. On top of that, the doctors were not allowed to bring their families. And of course, the reason they didn't bring their families or didn't allow them is because they didn't want these doctors seeking asylum. Once your family's in Brazil, then you run over to an embassy and you seek asylum. So the Cuban government was using these doctors by not really paying them correctly, and on top of that, they were separating them from their families. Well, President-elect Bolsonaro of Brazil decided that Brazil was no longer going to play that game, that only if the money was paid directly to the doctors and their families were allowed to come, that the program would continue. Well, obviously, the Cuban government is not going to support that, because this is not about bringing doctors to Brazil. This is about creating foreign currency for the Cuban government. So these doctors are going back to Cuba, but maybe not. Now it appears they may be going to Mexico, where it looks like the new president, López Obrador, has made a deal with the Cuban government to bring some of these doctors to Mexico. But the question is, under what conditions? I mean, are they going to be allowed to work in Mexico as freely as anybody else? Or is it going to be the same arrangement? We don't know yet. The details have yet to be published. There is a very interesting article about this over at Penn Post, and I have a post coming out Thursday morning about this. But the bottom line is that this is a disgrace. This is exploitation of people. That's what this is. And I'm not surprised the Cuban government is doing it. And I'm grateful that the incoming president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, has decided not to continue this. But I'm really surprised that López Obrador, a man who claims to be for rights for people and for workers and so on, that he would participate in this exploitation of Cuban doctors. I mean, if they want to come and work in Mexico like any other doctor, that's fine. But what you're seeing here is really, I think, a very bad idea that López Obrador in Mexico appears to want to continue. So I'm hoping that Mexican public opinion will rebel against this, that the Mexican Congress will rebel against the idea and simply say to the Cuban government, we're not going to participate in the exploitation of these workers. We don't mind paying the money directly to them, and we don't mind having their families come over with them. But what the Cuban government is doing is just total, complete exploitation of these Cuban doctors. And I'm glad to see that it was stopped in Brazil. I'm really, really disappointed that the Mexican government has decided to adopt the policy that Brazil rejected. So I hope López Obrador will change his mind and not continue to exploit these Cuban doctors. Thank you for watching. We have all of these over on YouTube, we have them on Twitter, and we have them on my blog. And if December 12th is your birthday, happy birthday. Bye-bye, everybody.